Welcome, everybody, to another conversation as part of the Illumination Project of the Springfield History Museum. Today, I'm really glad to be here with Jodi Willis. My name's Thomas Huda. I'm the story collector for this project this year, and we are co-leading this initiative with Mimi Noyedo, our photographer, and Amy Yogi, our consultant. Jodi, I'm so glad to be here with you. How are you today?
Good, thank you.
Good. Well, I just love getting to talk with you because you have this energy and this zest to communicate, and I think that's really exciting for me as an interviewer. And I know that you have a background with adoption and with an organization called Bertha Holt
International Adoption Agency.
Holt International Adoption Agency. And it also is named after the same Bertha Holt, for which there's an elementary school named after her in Eugene. And so can I hear a little bit about sort of your background?
Yes.
I know that's vague and broad.
So I am the second child that my parents adopted through Holt International. My older sister's from South Korea, and then from my understanding, the fall of Saigon was happening, and my mother said Holt called them. They had been praying for a second baby, and she hadn't gotten pregnant yet. And Holt International called them and said, hey, we've got 25 babies on their way to America with no homes. You've already gone through the home study program. Would you be interested? And they said yes.
Wow.
And
this was 1975?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
May of 1975. So I was born in March. So they were preparing. They had normally through the procedures through adoption, you get a photo of the baby. There's a little bit of a background, and my parents had no idea. They said they had no idea what I looked like. They didn't know if I was. I mean, with the way the war was, she didn't know if I was half black, half. If I was a half baby. They had no idea. They just said yes. So I should have arrived at the beginning of May. I think, yes, but I got ill with another baby, and so Hawaii was a stop for a lot of from what I've been reading about Operation. So it's called Operation Baby Lift, which was getting all the babies out of Vietnam.
Right.
And it was more than just that. I mean, I thought it was just a small little thing that Holt had the only ones you sponsored, but I actually belonged to a Operation Baby Lift group on Facebook, which I'm pretty silent on, just because but you have to answer. It's a private group to a certain extent. But I had through this Facebook page, I realized it was all over the United States and Australia and New Zealand.
Wow.
It was worldwide, and these organizations got together and they brought these babies. Brought them in.
Right.
So anyway, I was so I was told I was on the last flight that Holt had flying out of Vietnam. Mm-hmm. Like, you're on it, and so another baby and I were on that flight. And Hawaii was a stop for a lot of refueling and feeding, and there was a lot of dehydration, which I believe is what our problem was dehydration. So even though we should have been back should have been pretty early in May, I didn't come until the end because I was so sick I had to stay back for 2 weeks.
Wow.
And my mom tells me that when it was time to come to finish the flight, one of the babies died.
Oh, wow.
And they didn't know which one it was.
Oh, no.
So it's really sad, but it wasn't me.
I read that as they were doing this Operation Baby Lift, these flights were going out, and the adults would that were part of them were assigned sort of 10 babies to take care of and make sure they got to their destination.
Right. They had a first flight.
Immense responsibility. And then the airport was going to be destroyed afterwards.
It had already been bombed.
Wow.
Well, they had the first flight they had, I want to say it was the beginning of April. It actually crashed because it was a cargo plane. And they had taken boxes and then the straps and going through the holes of the boxes. And that's how they strapped the kids in. And that one, later they found out it was like, it wasn't anything against the North, that the North Vietnam the Army didn't do anything. It was just the fluke of nature or whatever.
Right.
But that airplane crashed, and many children and embassy workers and volunteers who are they were all on the way to get back to the United States, they had died.
Wow.
So that's when they
And then
decided
the very
to charter.
next day, is that the flight that you were on? Okay, but then there was another flight of folks on not a cargo plane, but a passenger plane the very next day. I have to imagine the fear.
Oh, yeah. And that's why Holt decided that's why they got Pan Am to help them charter an actual passenger plane. And that's how that started after that crash. So there was a passenger plane, and then they actually had seats, and they were actually there's the Pan Am Museum that has a feature they did. Unfortunately, I wish I had been able to go, but I couldn't. Not too long ago, they have a whole museum about how they helped.
We don't talk about competing museums. We don't give any attention or shine.
But it's in New York.
Right. All right. And so you were raised by parents who weren't Asian, is that
No,
right?
my mom's Caucasian. My dad's half Hispanic, half Caucasian. So, yes.
Yeah, wow, that's such a little, I hate to say melting pot. There's so much representation just in that family unit. And do you have siblings?
Yes, so my older sister's from Korea, then I am from Vietnam, and then my younger sister, I call her homegrown because she's their biological. And then we have our younger brother who is also adopted from Korea, but they're not blood related. None of us are blood related. But
And so when you came to the U.S., where did you live initially?
Springfield, Carter Lane, and then grew up pretty much. My sister and her husband live in the house that we grew up. Yeah.
In what part of Springfield?
Off the Jasper Road.
Off Jasper Road. Rock on. Wow. And so have you ever lived anywhere else, or have you pretty much kind of your roots down here?
My husband was in the military, so we lived in Oak Harbor, Washington, and
The
then
U.S.
29
military,
Palms.
of course.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, he's Caucasian. He went to Marist High School.
okay.
Yeah, he's a white boy.
All right. Wow. Yeah. No. I mean, for me, being raised by a white parent and an Asian mom, I've always had some interesting just experiences, with people being like, "That's your son," or "That's your mom," or "That's your dad." Probably a little bit of that in your upbringing, I imagine.
I think one time Jason was getting out of the military, so I had come home early, and we decided where we're going to go, and I said, we're going to go back home. So we got a little place in Springfield, and the movers asked, what did he ask? Because he met my parents. He goes, "Can I ask you a personal question?" I was like, "Sure." He goes, "Are you adopted?" I said, "Oh yeah, white lady, half Hispanic makes Asian. Didn't you know?" I said, "Yes, I am." I mean, he wasn't mean, and I wasn't cruel either about it. It was like hey, ask instead of just speculate.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think when people think about adoption, they have often at least a societal negative perception. There's concern, and some of it I'm sure is real, that child won't feel like they're truly a part of the family, or that they're somehow an asterisk on whether they're fully a part of the family. Do you have any experiences with that, or do you think there's like a positive side to that whole thing too? Because it's obviously not all negative. It's beautiful.
It is. I can personally say, and I believe that my older sister and my younger brother would also say that as crazy as every mother and father are, my parents never had favorites. Like, we were treated equally. Actually, if anybody's a favorite, it's my brother, because he's the only boy and he's the youngest, and he's the favorite because we all treat him like he's the favorite. He's a wonderful man. But no, I have to say my parents were fantastic. Because of we went to a small church that's somewhat inexistent on Main Street towards Thurston. There is a lot of families in that church who actually ended up adopting because my parents had. And we're 7 to 10 years older than a lot of the kids that were adopted, and we hung out together, and I babysat them, and even as they grew up, I have still a relationship with some of them, and they did not have good upbringings, and some of it had to do with not being accepted, and other things had nothing to do with the color of their skin. It's just because every family's messed up.
Families are really hard.
Yeah, there is no
I
perfect.
come from a pretty dysfunctional one too.
Every family's dysfunctional. There's just levels, and it's
Right.
so. I mean, if you there isn't, yeah. But I can personally say that my parents loved each and every one of us equally. We never felt, if anything, maybe my sister who's not adopted, maybe actually got because she was the only not Asian face child. I always told her, I said, you have white privilege, so I don't know what you're talking about. But I think she may have felt little different. Like we could always say, there's a recording my dad had, like how we came in an airplane. Like we came in an airplane, and and she go, I came in from mommy's tummy. That didn't matter. But then she goes, one day she said, I came from a helicopter. She just had to make up something else.
Changes over time.
Yeah, because at least it was somewhat equal.
Yeah, that's classic. It's like my dad would tell stories about the crane machine where you get the toys and stuff. And because he was on a winning streak, and so, he would tell people, we got 8 in a row, and then years go by. Remember that time we got 15 in a row? Remember when we got 18 toys in a row out of that? Mm-hmm. I also think something that's interesting with families, at least from my own Japanese-American perspective, I was watching a documentary last night, and it happened to be, this is going to be a tangent, but it's going to come back. There's maybe Amy's familiar with this, kind of public versus private. There's honne versus tatemae. This is something I learned in a documentary last night. They were speaking specifically about the sumo world is kind of... there was some corruption exposed, and then matches were rigged in the 80s. And this was a revelation to people because some people didn't believe that was true. But in Japan, there's such a distinct concept between sometimes the tatemae is sometimes you create an artificial story of what's going on, and the honne is the truth behind it. So the tatemae for the sumo situation was that these matches are all being fought fairly. The honne behind it is, there's like a little wink, wink, nudge, nudge behind it, and that there's actually some fixing going on or whatever. And I think that can be true, at least in my perspective, in the family. You put up the image of the family being the most, we all present it as best as we can in the Asian community. And sometimes what's going on behind the scenes, there's a disconnect or,
Yep.
So do you feel, is there anything from what I just said that connects to something interesting you want to talk about?
Well, no, but it's true. I mean, you can be married for X amount of years and you just had this huge fight in the car on the way to church. Mm-hmm. And so then the whole family shuffles in and they're sitting next to each other. But then 5 minutes ago, you were having a yelling match. But yet to the church and the congregation, you came in, you sat together as a family. They have no idea what happened. But it's what's in the heart and in the mind. And at least, but because you're a family, we arrive as a family. Mm. And we worship as a family, and that doesn't always happen, but it's a grounding. It's an accountability that it's not just me. I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I am, I'm a coworker, and I choose to be obligated to these people. Mm. And so, yeah.
I'm curious about growing up in the church with your family. Because I didn't grow up in a church with my family. I came into it a little bit independently and have been in and out. But I have to imagine that sense of community, in a relatively small area, like small town, Springfield, Oregon. What was it like for you being a part of the church and your family?
We were, it's so funny because my grandparents on my mom's side call them old school Nazarene. So we couldn't go, they didn't believe in dancing or gambling or drinking or anything like that. And my mom didn't follow that to the T. Like when we had our prom dresses, we just could show grandma the pictures after prom. We couldn't show her our dress before. And this little things because, I look at it back now and I see that was just being respectful to her. It wasn't we were hiding. It was like we weren't going to change the certain things. My mom has chosen a different lifestyle and a different type of way of believing. Didn't make her being dishonorable. I think it was flashing something that you knew your parents totally didn't like. That would be dishonorable, in my opinion.
I see.
But I think we were treated well. You know, if anything happened within the church, it had to do with just adolescents. Kids are mean.
Mm-hmm.
I never had normally. I can say that I can't think of anything in the church that had to do with basis of the color of my skin.
Mm-hmm.
For it doesn't matter what color you are. My biggest thing as an adult with children, teenage children, and young adult children, is that just because we are in the house that serves the Lord, doesn't mean the children will, and I think so many times I can say this like I could write a soap opera regarding what happened in the lives when I was a child. Not horrible, just the drama. But just the fact that for us to condemn our children for not following what we perceive as God's word or his will or his way doesn't mean your kid's a rotten kid. They just may not have a relationship with Christ. They may not understand that relationship, and each of us will have to find that our own salvation through Christ. And just because you grew up in a Christian home does not make you Christian. Just because you grew up in a Catholic home, I don't think that makes you Catholic or any other. I think it's where you are. It's your relationship. But I feel like during the 70s, 80s, and even the 90s, as Christians, that was a hard thing to realize. And it wasn't until, believe me, it wasn't until I was a mid-adult that I realized that my choice of having a relationship with Christ is my choice, not because my parents made me do it or made me go. And yeah.
That's so powerful to come to it to yourself, though. You know, I mean, I do not envy the experience of pastors' children because there's such a intrinsic expectation with growing up that you have to be, you know, and the way you put it too is a relationship with Christ. What in what world does it make sense to say you, person A, must have a relationship with this person? Usually those manufactured scenarios are not very authentic, you know? So for you to be able to say, you know, I've come to it and that it's a relationship that's important to me, and what a relationship other people have to their faith or to their God or to Christ is going to be something that's with them. And there's also beauty in convening when you know, it makes it more powerful when you are together congregating. Everyone really believes it. You know?
Yeah. Oh, my husband and I went through a really dry spell because we met actually at First Baptist Church in Eugene on Wednesday night youth group. That's where we met. And after we got married and moving.
So how old were you? Like 16, 17? Youth group, sometimes that can be young.
Yes. So we met our senior year. So we got married. I was 19 and he was still 18 when we got married. Huh. Yeah. Yeah. So when he went into the military, it was really, we tried to go to churches, but I have to say back then, I mean, First Baptist has always had really great pastors. And so it was so hard to compare these pastors at these smaller churches and smaller communities to this wonderful pastor. And so we kind of stopped going. We never stopped having a relationship with Christ, but we just stopped communing just because it was so hard. I mean, and I was young. Golly, we were both out of high school. And then even coming back, when we came back to Springfield after he got out of the military, we just went to the same church my parents did, and the Springfield Nazarene Church, and it was great. And then we had started having kids, and then working full time and children, and so we went through this dry spell of not attending, and it was about when my kids started going to elementary school, and I was like, oh God. So for me, youth group was very important as a teenager. My parents got divorced when I was in 8th grade, and it was devastating for all of us. My brother would have been, 5th grade. My older sister would have been a freshman, and it was hard because it had to do with betrayal. So not only your spouse is betrayed, but then your children are betrayed. And it was devastating because I remember oh, don't you think Mom and Dad are just like on House on the Prairie? They're just like, Laura and Charles Ingalls and, all this. I mean, that's truly how, in my mind, how our family was. And then in my parents, always been Christian, but does not make us perfect. And we make poor choices and things happen. And so, but my sophomore year of high school, my parents, my father repented and my mother took him back and they got remarried my sophomore year of high school. And now they've been married for 50 years, something like that.
Wow.
Little, like I said, like a little 2-year dry spot, but yeah. So that taught me a lot about what marriage was and forgiveness and circumstances and the whole story kind of thing.
Right.
I mean, because this April, I'll be married 29 years.
Wow.
Shoot.
Good for you. That's incredible. So that's amazing.
Sorry, I was like, dang, I'm old.
No, we're getting into these
old
really
lady
exciting
age.
We're exploring family, and commitment and relationship, and I think that so much of a really strong. I'm in a committed relationship. We're not engaged or anything, but there's so much of it is sacrifice, and so much of it isn't thought of as sacrifice when you're going into it. I think, and sacrifice isn't all negative. I think just by choosing to recognize another human being, look them in the eye, and say we're stronger together than we were as individuals, means that you value something there enough to, whether it be not commit infidelity or not, make sure you're home at this hour, so so that your commitment can actually center around that, and then it can grow on that from that stability of that strong partnership.
Because sometimes some things, and the idea of marriage, yes, you forgo any other relationships. That one is that's a cut and dry, right?
At least in your marriage,
and exactly.
Right? We're not speaking for everybody.
Not everybody, but at the same time, just because you have a career or a certain desire to do something in life, you might have to postpone it. That's postponing doesn't mean giving up.
Right.
Yeah, I still remember when we were still married, and my husband, that's why I joined the military, because he wanted to be a doctor, so he was a corpsman for the Navy. And then he discovered he didn't like touching people.
Oh.
Well, that one really eliminated the whole, that's out.
Yeah.
But I remember we would have these, we were young. He was, 18, 19. And I was like, I don't care what you want to do. If you had a desire, if you wanted to work as a city worker, I use the term gas attendant or a garbage man. I said, if that's what you want to do and you did it well, then so be it. But I will tell you, 50 years from now, I am not going to be your resentment for you not pursuing your career because you thought it was going to inconvenience me. I said, I am not your scapegoat. I said that right away. And so it was just one of those things. No way, I'm not playing that game. And yes, it took us to where we are now. He got his degree as with a mortgage and 2 kids. And doing a full-time job and going parts. Yeah, that was not ideal either, but we did it, and it was a huge sacrifice. But
so you're a mother of 2.
Yes.
Wow.
So so things don't happen exactly the way you thought they were going to happen, but it's just being for us. It's our relationship with Christ is the foundation, because that never changes no matter what circumstances happen. What you do yourself, what someone does to you, what a stranger does to you, that foundation with Christ never changes, and that his word and how he does have a purpose and how he wants things to be, that never changes. He doesn't say, well, I'll let that one slide because of that circumstance. It's still the same, but beauty from ashes. He can make something beautiful out of something so devastating. And I've seen that, especially as a mother, becoming a mother. You hear it. It's always in whatever things you go to attend, but it's true. And so what I was getting at was that the youth group is really part of why we started going back to churches, because I wanted to make sure our children, if hits the fan at home, that they have somewhere to go, that I know that at least their guidance they will get will be what? Even though mom and dad didn't keep it together, at least that place might have kept together for them. And that was my balance when my parents got divorced, was my youth group. I hung on to that. I was, could go to people and know that they were going to counsel me and support me and push me in a path that would be what my parents would have wanted.
Singing songs, was that a part of your youth group experience?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the intersection of music and faith is really a powerful, important part of it for me.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, and that's worship. I mean, that is the worship.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I wanted to ask you a few things about Springfield.
Okay.
Because I just think it's wonderful that you've been here for so long. And I think that when I conjure up the image in my head, and I think others probably have this feeling too, of what a Springfielder looks like, it doesn't immediately go to you. And so, that, I hope you're okay with that.
Nope.
And so I guess maybe there might be misconceptions about this community or perceptions of what this community is like. And do you have anything to say about that as someone who's actually lived here?
Yeah. Have you heard the term Spring-tucky? Yeah. I mean, that's definitely Springfield is a little more country, a little more, yeah. I mean, I'm going to rednecky. I mean, you know.
In a beautiful way.
Yeah, no, because I mean, my kids all go, you know, they attend local high school, and they go to the high school I went to high school, so that's kind of crazy. Because that's still, I think it was when my daughter was graduating.
Millers? That one, Springfield High School?
Oh, no, we went Thurston.
Colts.
Colts. When I went to, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so weird. Like, I haven't been here forever. And it's like everything's like some of it's the same, some of it's different, but it's like, yeah. But I hadn't thought about high school. Like I didn't like school, so you know. But yeah, but it's just so weird to have them going to my same high school.
Yeah, as a mother, just putting your kids through school in general, I feel like when you first started doing that, was it hard, or was it like, 8 hours a day, I don't have to be parenting them, or was it kind of like, these are my babies? Like, was it difficult to put your kids through public school? I mean, I love public school. I'm so glad I went through Eugene 4J myself. But you know, I imagine as a parent, it's just there's so much trust that you have to put in.
Yes, we were very blessed that my aunt at the time was a principal at the elementary school where our kids went.
So you had eyes in all places.
We were even out of district, but I was like, I don't care. We're out of district, but we're going to go to the school where Aunt Sherry's at. So we were really lucky that. And I was able to. So I worked until my daughter was into her fourth grade year, and my son was in kindergarten. I stopped working like full time. So then I volunteered once a week at that school. I would usually do mornings when both kids were at the same school. I would do mornings for one class for his, and then in the afternoon for hers. And so I was able to do that for at least a year and a half, which was great. And then I did volunteer in the middle school for a while, but that one was cut short because middle school and volunteering is not the same as elementary school.
Oh, right. Nope. More attitude. My partner is subbing. She's subbing my partner right this second at a middle school.
Yeah.
And I do get it's hard because I love kids that age. I mean, there's so much about them that's precious and sweet. Maybe they're that lingering innocence, that lingering childhood sweetness before they become. I guess, but in some ways they are also quite bratty at that age. And so I get texts saying, I'm never coming back, Thomas. I'm not going back to the school. The kids won't stop throwing things, and they're especially rude to the subs.
Yes.
So.
I always joke about helping people envision getting married and then having a family. They think about the baby, and they think about, like toddler, and then somewhere down the line we jump to high school and them being this athlete or whatever, and then them going to college and whatever. No one dreamt about the middle school years ever.
Yes, that's so true. And then because you've been in Springfield for decades, do you feel, I don't want to personally presume what your experience is as an Asian American. I would never want to do that, but I want to open up the possibility to talking about it because we have more restaurants, more markets, more visibility over time in this community. And it doesn't mean that, again, I already we've touched on how it doesn't mean that you really think about the Asian American community in Springfield immediately. I think that's why this project is neat, to be like, oh yeah, remember this is a part of the community as well. No more important and no less important than anyone else. But has it changed over time, whether it's experiences with just prejudice or anything like that?
Oh, for sure. Just having, like when I went to high school, it was my siblings and my friend James Anderson and his siblings, and maybe scattered here and there, maybe 10 or 15. And you're talking about a place that has like 400 kids. So that's not very many. Mm-hmm. And then, so it was, I mean, never got treated, the worst person who ever treated me in school was the girl who was actually Puerto Rican. And I felt like back then all I was just trying to survive. But as an adult, I look back, it's like, well, she couldn't hammer on the white girl, so she just took the next minority.
Wow.
Made sense. Now I think back, it makes sense. And that's just the way the pecking order goes.
Wow. Yeah.
But now it's so funny because my kids are half, but they have my dark hair and the dark eyes. My husband's Caucasian with the lighter. And so Thurston, I love Thurston, but Thurston is a little bit of a bubble, protective bubble. There isn't a lot of minorities, which I don't have a problem with that. It's just, I'm just stating a fact. So then we're actually like I said, we're at a district. So when it came to middle school, my daughter, they had closed all the transfers, so she had to go to Agnes Stewart Middle School. In the long run, love Agnes. It was a great fit for her. But I remember my husband dropping us off for open house, 6th grade, middle, meet your teacher, get your schedule. So he dropped us off and we all go in and, we're getting our food and she's getting her schedule. And he finally finds us and he goes, it took me 15 minutes to find you. There's so many people here with dark hair. Because Agnes Stewart has a heavier Hispanic population of the kids who attend. So it was the first time that he can spot the Asians anytime you go to Thurston, but you can't. But the great thing now is most kids think that my daughter, when they first met her, was Hispanic because she, when you're half, the features. Yeah. But just there's so many more kids. Just, it doesn't have to be Asian, just so much diversity, just different colors. And I love it because she doesn't that's one thing that she doesn't have to feel self-conscious about. Because I remember, wasn't when my husband in the Navy and I worked at a retail store and was one of the managers, and I remember he said to me, I could never bring an Asian girl home. And at that moment I was like, is that why no one ever asked me on a date? Because I asked my husband on a date. And I was like, is that why? I never even thought for a second that the reason why boys didn't ask me out was maybe because it could have been the color of my skin. Yeah, so it was kind of but I was married by then, so it didn't matter. But it was like that dawning moment. And I have to say, it's one thing that I know that my daughter doesn't have to worry about. Like the chances of her not being asked on the date is because she's a different color or a mix. I mean, growing up here, my mom had said my grandparents were reluctant when my parents started adopting different, races. But I have to say, grandparents loved us, treated us just the same. But when I got married, it was my husband's grandmother who did not like that she was very cruel. Oh, yeah. So having to deal with her was somewhat difficult, but at the same time, she didn't know me. So I realized I couldn't be offended or really hurt by someone who doesn't actually know me. And in the long run, and my husband's side of it, my father-in-law, he says, if she can't accept Jodi, then she's not my mother. For 10 years, we didn't have to do any holidays or celebrate birthdays with her because she wasn't going to be kind. But in the end, Grandma Grace, she came around. I think it was having grandkids, actually, because Halloween just was yesterday. So there was a certain time, because she would say, going to say what she used to call me.
Sure.
She would call me a Jap and a creepy crawly and tell everybody that we were going to have ugly children.
Oh, no.
And even Aunt Georgia, she would write her and going, I cannot believe you say these things. And she goes, and Aunt Georgia goes, you never raised us to be that way. Deep down, I think she was just a mean woman. I don't think she was racist. She just used the superficial language to be cruel because she was a cruel woman.
Grab whatever could. Use whatever weapon is sharp enough.
Oh, yeah.
Huh.
No, I have stories from the other sister or daughter-in-laws of what cruel things she said to them. And it pretty much was as equal as calling me names. So she was not a nice person.
Now you get to get back at her, and this is going to be recorded forever. So
she's passed away. But I have to say, so when she started being kind to us, enough that my biggest thing was as long as she didn't make my children feel any less, it was all that I cared about. And she did it. They did a good job. They were kind. She came around. So every Halloween, I would come to the assisted living place. I only visited them once a year, and it was on Halloween. The kids would be dressed up. I'd be dressed up. We'd go to the assisted living house, and they would get to see the kids in costume. We'd get to say hello. They'd get to get pictures, and we would leave. And that was once a year, and Halloween was the it. And when she passed away, all her kids, Grace's kids, all thought that she and I were like best friends. And that's all I did. I promise you.
Wow, yeah.
I promised you that's all I did. So,
what an
and I
interesting
thought,
situation.
then my job was done. That's how I felt. Like I said, if she was an older woman on the street and had a flat tire, and I wouldn't drive by, right? So I wasn't gonna. She did not know me well enough for me to feel bitter or feel hurt, and I wasn't enough for me to treat her any worse.
Jodi, it seems, let me phrase this the right way because this could go on a poster. It seems that you have deep and enduring experiences with racism, but you're not focused on it day to day. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Talk about that.
I know it exists, but I also know, I think it's not, I know it exists stronger, and I think each day it gets better, but I believe some of it is ignorance. And ignorance isn't bigotry, and ignorance isn't racist. Ignorance is ignorance, not
We've
knowing.
all been ignorant of things.
Yeah.
By definition.
But at the same time, I also feel like so many things are said because it's a self-esteem issue. It's about you as a human being struggling to be liked, to be wanted, to be loved, to feel accepted, to feel like you have status. Who doesn't want to have that? And so in order to do that, we put other people down. Not everyone, but the easy humanistic way is to put someone down, to be cruel, or to exclude or not exclude. The popular girl, the popular boy gets invited to the party, the non-ones don't, right? Even though you don't know the popular boy, but if he shows up, it gives you status. It doesn't matter. Networking is an adult that happens. Like who do you know? Who are your friends on Facebook? Who's following you? Guess who liked my, it's always.
A couple weeks ago, I posted a picture and someone running for Congress liked it. And I'm like, hey, she's going to be in Congress soon. Still sees my posts. Hasn't muted me. But it's totally true.
But it's true. So I think, what do we sacrifice someone else's worth to get ourselves up? And that's weak. Very weak.
Yeah, because you're a strong person. I can tell that about you. I don't know if you would just take that as a compliment. But
I am now. I wasn't. That's something I haven't. I wasn't to be outspoken or even to do this. There's no way in heck. But it's confidence in the sense. Being in a relationship for 29 years, I don't have to worry about finding somebody, impressing someone to find my desires, to seek me, to love me, to make me feel wanted. I already have that. So that's already off my plate, right? And then society tells you you have to be a mother. Well, I've got that one. And so far, so good. My kids are good, well-behaved, As I say, my job is to make sure that when you leave this house that you are a positive contributor to the community that you are in. That is my goal. And that's why we do things the way we do, because someday I won't be here and then that is your role.
You can brag for a little bit. How are your kids affecting the community positively? Do you feel that they are?
Oh, yes.
That'd be really sad if you were just like,
yeah. My daughter, she graduated last year, and she's attending LCC, and she's in a choir, and then she's also she's the ghost of Christmas Past in a church event coming up for the Christmas Carol at Eastside Baptist, and that's in both the choir and this play that she's in is independent. She's doing it on her own. I think just being not getting arrested or being on Blaine County mugshots. I mean, gal.
Forgive me for reading into it, but Ghost of Christmas Past, she might be a very wise person.
Yeah.
She might be somebody who people trust her word, I didn't like my son in middle school, and I didn't like her in middle school, but as she has grown, she's becoming a very nice adult. Awesome.
And then as for my son, he's a very good young man. He's 15. He's a freshman. And I have to say, so he's been involved with Young Life, Springfield Young Life. Ron Sauer, he's just retiring as the director. But Ron was my 6th grade teacher at Briggs Middle School. And then he decided to do Young Life full time. So my son has been attending group with the end. What I love is it's open to any. This is the freshman group, so it's open to any freshman, and it is boys because they have girls ones. So this is boys, and what I love is he had a couple friends who I said, "Hey, so and so is going to come to Young Life with you because his parents need a ride, and and I was wondering you should invite him that way. We can pick him up after, because my son would walk after football practice to Ron's house, and then we pick him up after, and they feed them and whatnot." And so he goes, "Oh yeah, and so went too." He goes, and what he said was, "Yeah, I see how you guys, the group of boys who play football who also attend Young Life, you guys have a connection, and you're like always there for each other, and they're cheerleaders, like they're always supporting each other. And I want to see that. I want to see what's going on." So the fact that he's just being himself, but yet these boys who maybe never heard about Christ, but they see that there's something different in these young men, I think he's contributing.
Wow. Yeah.
Yep.
Positivity spreads well if you're willing to be brave and reach out to people and all of that. Mm-hmm. I also have to think that as a parent of 2 young adults now, there's a certain trust that you put in the future, or I would be worrying about the future if I brought a kid into the world. There's so much that feels less than stable right now. Hopefully people watching this, and I mean this really in people watching this in the 2040s, 2050s, 2060s, if you're listening, thank you. They have to understand that we're in a time right now that feels chaotic and feels destabilized, and without being any focused on any particular issue or anything, I think you probably derive your faith in the future from your faith in God, but where does that come from? Your willingness to trust in the future.
Well, I have a lot of nieces and nephews who are at the age of 18 to those boys, 25. And I know a lot of, for them, for some they just, no, I don't want to have kids. Why would I want to bring a kid into this world? And then I even have friends who have coworkers who have kids who are in their 30s. And there's I was hoping I was going to be a grandma, but no, my they don't want to have kids. And it breaks my heart, because there has never been a great time to have a child. Sorry. I mean, we're not talking financially, we're not individual. We're talking about time period. And here we're talking, it's and that is total faith, because we can't have, it's knowing that so when I was in high school, the librarian, Mr. Essig, overheard me and my friends talking because it was, I don't know, I was like, I'm never having kids because kids are poops, I'm sorry, but, and he turned around and looked at me and he said, you are the exact kind of people that need to have kids. And I was like, whoa. And the fact that I could still remember that after 30 years. And then as an adult, I'm thinking, he's right. It's the ones who are aware of that life isn't going to be perfect and there are going to be ups and downs, but still knowing that new life is so much better than nothing. I mean, yeah, I can't even imagine, I mean, I love my children.
Yeah.
I never thought I would. I mean, we waited 10 years to have kids. When I didn't want to be 19 and have a child, but that was I actually went through a period that I thought we wouldn't. I mean, 10 years not having children, that's not normal. But we just kind of got a house and it's like, I guess it's time to have kids. I mean, that's what happens, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I never some people I never worshiped them or but I knew that they were special. I don't know. I didn't dote over them which is fine if people do, but I don't know because I think I felt like I know that I am creating a human being for something, for not me. Is that weird?
Yeah, some greater purpose, or the plan isn't your plan.
Or the total fear that something bad will happen. This is another thing because I'm very actually pessimistic. If I invest too much into them, like I said, dreaming about you're going to be the quarterback and you're going to be the president of the United States. I never ever think about what they're going to be because that's not their dream. That's my dream. And if I start thinking of the things I want them to be, and then they don't, all I'm doing is cutting myself short, but on something that's not even real.
Wow.
And I think so many parents do that. You know what I mean? If I wish I'm going, and that's the whole thing about the faith. I love my family, and we were raised in a Christian family, and we had our ups and downs. But I see how my siblings, we don't all have a relationship with Christ, and it saddens me. But at the same time, that was my realization that it doesn't always happen that way. That we each were under the same house, and we were under the same circumstances. We had the same traumatic, divorce is traumatic situation, and we all totally dealt with that differently. And yeah, sorry, parents can really F up your kids. But at the same time, it was where it's just each of us finding, overcoming it. And we all did it differently.
This has been a really lovely and rich interview. I've really enjoyed just your willingness to get deep and go into these different topics. And this might be one of the deepest of them all, I think, because so much of what I've asked you has come back to faith. And one of the things with me, I'm not currently involved in a church. I've seen the value of having that at various points. I have friendships and relationships. I especially value my friendships across the political spectrum because nowadays because I have a very strong political identity and belief, and now I feel social pressure to reject friends who don't, and I don't like that. I would like to be connected with people and know really what they're hearing and seeing and what leads them to believe things that might be very different than what I believe. So I've seen the value of church and faith and community, but also one of the things is I don't think that it's easy to observe the way that this microphone stand or this phone is. There's a leap of faith, right? So much of it is based on things that are not as easy to observe. I don't want to say God has never spoken to me or something, because maybe God has, but what about those times when you doubt and you're like, what if you have based so much of your life on something that isn't true? I mean, no, because like I said, family members who don't have a relationship with Christ. Maybe "isn't true" is a weird way to put it, but that's just what I'm trying to get at.
Well, I mean, I guess So the purpose of Christ is the fact that if you find your salvation, and salvation is only through him, that you will then, because I believe we have a soul. Mm-hmm. I know there are people who do not believe that we have souls, that when we die, there's nothing. Mm-hmm. So that's a hard one. When I believe that we have a soul, that we will be those who, and it's like, a prayer that I say a lot, and as I gotten older and learned more about what it is to have a relationship with Christ and what his purpose is, it's like, it's not the fact that I knew him, it was that he knew me. Because a lot of people know that Jesus exists, know his name, read the Bible up and down, whatever. They know, they can recite Bible verses. They can know Jesus, but do they know him? Do they have a personal relationship to the point that that he accepts me exactly the way I am? And if a past that may not has been clean, or still presently living in a situation that we know may not be God's liking. But if I come to him, he accepts me. He's not saying, okay, because you now have a relationship with me, you have to stop all this. He never makes a demand on that. Mm. But what it is that you realize that you don't want to live that life anymore. Because all it has is brought disappointment, ridicule, shame. I mean, if shame is because you should have done something different, right? Mm-hmm. What is it? I heard today is like God always gives us the right way out. It's whether or not we choose to take that route. Mm. And as a through life, everything has sacrifice. Mm-hmm. Everything could be financial. And it could be spiritual in the sense of I am going to be human. Like my jobs in my life, the last jobs I've had, I've been fired. And I laugh.
I feel like we haven't gotten to your professional life at all. Oh. I had another interview in this room where the gentleman was only talking about his professional life. So it's kind of interesting to think about because, whether you wanted to get into any of that.
Yeah. I work as a barista at the coffee shop,
cool.
A coffee gift shop, but I actually own my own business too. I make earrings.
Phenomenal. Oh, yes. You make earrings and you sell them.
Yes, my earrings, yes.
So we used to joke.
We used to joke that this is my side hustle. Now I think the barista job is my side hustle, which is kind of good. Yeah, so it gives me the chance to gave me a chance to stay home. But which has led, like I said, humiliation. I always oh, God, yeah, I got fired for the last 2 jobs. And it really wasn't, I know I could have done better, but it wasn't solely I went out and punched somebody kind of mm-hmm. blatantly. And one day my girlfriend said, she goes, Jodi, it's not humiliation, it's humbling. And I thought, oh my gosh, you're right. I shouldn't be humiliated. Yeah, sure, it's not proud about it, but at the same time, it humbled me to realize where I needed to be. And it was at home.
Yes.
For me, it was home. Mm. So, and that's mm-hmm. where I find, and, so my business.
Sometimes people will be in a job, they're just comfortable enough to not quit, but then it's not the right fit for them. Mm-mm. So sometimes just to have that ending, start the new chapter, figure out what you really need to be doing with your times.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So, in my situation, I got fired for being bullied.
Oh, goodness.
But somehow, because I kind of participated, which I shouldn't have reciprocated, caused some issues. And I admit that, like I said, I wasn't perfect. Mm. But the funny part was my husband had just gotten a raise. And when we did the finances after I got fired, it was his raise was exactly the amount of money that I made part-time. Wow. We wouldn't have done the calculation if I hadn't gotten fired, and we would just spend that money on stuff that we didn't need. So that was my first, you talk about God moment of God does take care of you. And sometimes it isn't pretty. God has a sense of humor that no one knows. Sense of humor. And then from that, I helped raise a friend of the family's daughters. The daughter was 1 when I started watching her, and now she has, the daughter's 9, and she has a 6-year-old. But they were old friends of the family. Their parents actually, the mom's parents were actually at the airport with my parents when they adopted. So long. So I got to raise her kids 2 days a week for 7 years. And then now, and the only reason I'm at the coffee shop is because they were going to school full time, and I didn't want to work just little teeny hours. I just wanted a solid. All I said was, all I need is $78 a week. That's all. I don't just to get that income. So in between, then I'm very but kind of crafty. So then I was actually it was a Wednesday night youth group, middle school. My daughter. Mother-daughter got invited for Mother's Day, and Oregon Leather donated some leather to the girls, and we made jewelry. And I was like, oh, this is kind of fun. I can do this. So I started, figuring things out, and then I created my line, and I was trying to think of a name to do it, and I was like, I'm not going to use my name. But then I was like, I'm Asian. So I was like, nah, because yes, I know I'm Asian, but that's not who I am. I mean, I'm not saying it's bad. It's not bad or good.
I don't always want to be defined by it.
Well, yeah, and I thought, and here it being like, well, maybe if I said it's Asian, it might be more like people might be more interested. And I thought, that's to me is superficial, and that's not what I wanted to, in the long run, be my basis of what I named my, business or promoted it as. And then in the Bible, the Bible verse, there's the Psalms.
Sure.
Yes, sorry, thank you.
No problem.
91:4. So my business is Feathers and Arrows.
Psalms goes up to like 150 something. That's a lot in there.
It's a lot of songs. I was going to say, so it's Feathers and Arrows is the name of my business. And feathers because I make leather feather earrings, but feathers in the sense because there's a verse that's Psalms 91:4 that says, He will cover you with His feathers. He will shelter you with His wings. His faithful promises are your armor and protection. And the reason why I started the business was because I wanted to stay home. So what more to have faith, knowing that I'm in the wings of my family? And the other one verse where the arrows comes from is, it's Psalms 127, 3-5, and it says, children are a heritage from God, and that His goal is for us to have that we have a quiver full of arrows, become warriors of Christ. So my children, I have when I do things, I always say raising arrows, #, because I am raising arrows. I'm home to be with them, so that I can raise these arrows to go out and be warriors of God. And so that's why people think I'm Native American because it's the vibe, it's a boho-y vibe, and the name Feathers and Arrows, but it has nothing, it has to do with being a parent and raising my children. That's why I named it Feathers and Arrows. And I like that way better than trying to sell myself because it was owned by an immigrant woman. That to me is superficial. That is only skin deep, but the name with the verses has such, to me, an actual meaning.
Wow. Is there anything else that you feel like you wish that we had gotten to? This is about you. And I feel like people have gotten a lot from getting to hear from you. No. And I really appreciate it.
Oh, no, it's like, no, I love it here.
Yeah.
Other than the weather, I would like to live in California just for the sunny.
It's creeping up, though.
Yeah. But, no, we have good friends here. We love the church in our community, and there's ups and downs. We're all human, but my kids love it here. We have a home for them, and I don't know. That's one thing, and you don't move away. It's amazing how many people you end up knowing.
Right.
Or seeing, like some people I've never seen since high school, and then all of a sudden, because we start having kids at the same age, like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen you, and it's crazy. And then sometimes you run away from them because they treated you bad. But then
that thing where you don't remember their name too, and you're like, oh yeah, you.
But then you are forced to be in a room with them for some odd reason, and you realize, you know what? We all don't judge me by how I treated you in high school either, or middle school, because I was surviving. We all were surviving, and I am not the same person I was, 35 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so it's so funny because I would hide from one gal, and then we ended up, and I'm going, okay, she's not as bad as I thought. because that scar, that little bit of little something, and that takes time and maturity.
Yeah, absolutely. Interpersonal dynamics can just like have a person and a person, they just don't have connection, or they just like have the first reaction to one another just isn't symbiotic or something. Right. And it's like, it's just fascinating. Sometimes I have a friend, it's like, oh, you would love Brandon. It's like, okay, Brandon, you would love Nathan. And then it just isn't, the chemistry isn't there. But sometimes, and maybe that would be, forces beyond our control. They put people in your life, or they show you that this person that you had written off maybe add this whole other self to them.
Oh yeah. Or for me, I had a friend who I've known since 6th grade, and then rekindled as an adult, and I was helping her out with her business, and then she literally stole from me and made me walk away. And I was like, and that was supposed to be a good relationship. Like, I had good memories with her, and then, but the situation, I walked away, and my business scored. Like, the fact that I'm in more than 3 locations, that I get regular wholesale orders. If I hadn't left her, and I left because I was not being treated well, and it's kind of funny. It's like, I almost want to say, thanks for treating me like crap, because I would have never left. I would have been faithful to you. But right. Sometimes people don't earn that faithful, but sometimes we do, because we're a loyal and honorable person. But so, like I said, sometimes you got to kick yourself in the butt to move on.
Nice thing about Springfield, too. Yes, it's considered a small town, but there's enough people. You don't have to see the same person everywhere all the time necessarily.
Oh, yeah.
You can find your pockets of space.
No, for sure. Yeah. It's Springfield is a very nice place to raise your kids. Mm. I mean, there's gonna never be that perfect place. You're gonna, just like we're just learning now, the politics among just like getting your kids to play certain sports and being able to qualify and whatnot. It's like because it's not kid sports anymore, people. We want to win.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the truth. Because we always wanted to win. Yeah. Nobody wants to be in last place. Everybody wants to be in first. And so there's these new things of I don't know, I'm so not knowledgeable about the sports thingies. Like I stopped a long time ago yelling, like I'll say something and my husband, no, that was a bad thing. Oh. So I don't even say anything. I don't say, because I have no idea if it's good or bad, and I don't want to make a butt of a fool of myself.
Some of the politics around getting your kid into the sports teams too is sometimes the gear is expensive, and there's like new gear that comes out every year, and you keep up with the Joneses because for me in baseball, you had a new bat, a new helmet, batting gloves, cleats.
Most expensive sports.
Incredibly expensive glove, So
yeah, but the funny thing is, at least people don't know it, but because there's so many scholarships of just even going to the coach, because the coach isn't the one who's running it. He's under an organization. But it's being humble enough to say, you know what, my kid really loves this sport, but I can't afford that fee. What could we do? And it's admitting that you may not have the income, but it's going and saying, and I will tell you that the people that I know who are in that situation have said it, and there are some parents in the past who have given, like, we'll just pay for they pay for it. Amazing. And they don't ever know. Right. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But it's like, it's just be upfront. So we take honesty over they're not participating. I should, and they do really say that if your kid can't afford this or you can't afford the fee, come to me. And really, they make it happen. Amazing. But it takes a bit of, it's not humility, it's humbling yourself to say, I need help. Right. Well, this is awesome. I think that we've hit on so many wonderful things, and hopefully we'll get the chance to talk more sometime in the future. But Jodi Willis, I really want to thank you for being part of the Illumination Project this year of 2022-23. I'm Thomas Hura. Mimi Noyedo, Amy Yogi are here, and we're so glad to have had you. Thank you very much. Thank you. And thank you for the people watching at home. We appreciate you, and everybody take care. Bye-bye.